So every Saturday, I go through every single matchup to find the must-start and must-sit wide receivers, and usually I do these videos really early in the morning on Saturday. Well, I'm filming this on Saturday afternoon, and I'm glad I did, because even now, we've got some massive, important updates at the wide receiver position for injuries. So, I'm going through every single matchup in Week 11 fantasy football to find the must-start and sit wide receivers, guys. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. There are not too many fantasy football YouTubers working on a Saturday, guys, so please show your support. Let's go ahead and just dive through these matchups right now. We're going to go ahead and get started. Pittsburgh at Cleveland here. Nobody's a must-start in this matchup. Listen, Pittsburgh is the same thing every week. They don't have any must-start guys because the quarterback's no good. Kenny Pickett, if he's your quarterback, it's not working. It's not going to be anything consistent at all. So the best that we can hope for is that Diontae Johnson gets, 10 targets and he comes down with 5 or 6 of them for 70 yards and maybe a touchdown. Last week, he had one catch for about 15 yards. So it's nothing consistent ever, and they're taking on the Browns. So it's like neither of them are great options. George Pickens remains a flex play because of the fact that he can hit big plays. That's the only reason, though. There's been no consistency, especially with Diontae Johnson back. The ceiling is just not nearly as much there. And Amari Cooper, obviously a lot of things happened for him this week. No Deshaun Watson, no longer in must-start territory as he originally was heading into the week with Deshaun Watson. So Amari Cooper, definitely a better flex option than both Diontae and Pickens to me personally, because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is beatable. And I think with a full week of practice, Dorian Thompson-Robinson will look better. And Kenny Pickett is not hard to beat. And then you can't play Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore finally did something with his targets, but for me, he needs more time with Dorian Thompson-Robinson to have any hope in establishing any sort of chemistry personally. The Las Vegas Raiders at Miami Dolphins here. You want options in this matchup. Plain and simple, Tyreek Hill's a no-brainer. You don't discuss it any further. He's been fantastic. I've gotten some questions about whether you should trade Tyreek away. I think that's a mistake. I think it is. They're coming out of a bye week. I think they just needed a little break. And they're obviously getting a much easier opponent this week. I would not trade Tyreek Hill unless I was getting a massive return with elite players such as Christian McCaffrey involved in the deal. So you definitely play Tyreek Hill, no question. Devontae Adams and Jalen Waddle, they're basically in the same tier for me. I've got Devontae a couple spots above. Don't make too much of it. You play both of these guys. Devontae Adams above Jalen Waddle for me personally because of the fact that he got 14 targets last week. That's a game changer when you're getting 14 targets. And earlier in the week, not only did Antonio Pierce, the new head coach, take a shot across the bow over at Josh McDaniels, who was no longer there, but he also said, "I'm not stupid. We need to get Devontae Adams the ball." He's absolutely right. So Devontae Adams definitely going to be a must start. And Jalen Waddle for sure. Jalen Waddle's coming out of the bye week healthy. Great matchup. You play him. And then Jacoby Myers is a high-end flex option. The only reason I have concern, and I've stated this for weeks now, is the fact that when it comes to Jacoby Myers, his ceiling is always higher when he's with Jimmy Garoppolo. Because Jimmy Garoppolo and him have that New England connection. They were very, they definitely had some chemistry. I'm not seeing that with Aiden O'Connell. So I do have some worries here, although I would play him in a relatively strong matchup, and that's basically all who's relevant in this matchup. Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions here. You obviously pay Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dude's just been incredible. 150 plus receiving yard games, touchdowns galore. Amon-Ra St. Brown is never sit, especially not against the Bears secondary. And DJ Moore is a high-end flex option. With the return of Justin Fields, his ceiling returns as well. Now, his floor is always going to be the same. Regardless of if it's Tyson Bagent or Justin Fields, his ceiling is low because that offensive ceiling is low. I'm sorry, the floor is low. The ceiling is actually pretty high. I mean, we saw DJ Moore have like a 50-point game just about a month ago. So DJ Moore's still definitely a really high-end flex option. Gonna be teetering for the next several weeks between must-start category and flex territory. And I can't start anybody else. As much as I love the Detroit Lions offense, there's no consistency with Josh Reynolds. Jamison Williams has done nothing yet so far. And Darnell Mooney, no. Just no. It's not there right now for anybody else. Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars, guys. Christian Kirk is the only must-start. He's consistent with his targets. The Tennessee Titans secondary is bad. And Christian Kirk has good chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. That's the reason you play Christian Kirk here. DeAndre Hopkins, he's in the upper tier flex territory options for me, but you know, DeAndre Hopkins, I said it earlier in the week with him in the rankings video. I said, DeAndre Hopkins is just a guy that I want to be able to trust. He's one of my favorite receivers over the last decade in the NFL. But the problem with him is there's just no consistent upside. There's not any. So there's problems here, although you can flex him for sure. Calvin Ridley, you can flex him if you want to. If you want to go for that big play, that's fine. Just understand this is very similar to a Gabe Davis type of situation. He could either get you 0 points or he could get you 30 points. That's your range of outcomes right there. Are you willing to play it? Sometimes I am. But if you've got better options, Calvin Ridley's not a top tier option. Zay Jones, questionable to head into this week. And of course, Zay Jones has that Gabe Davis effect to him as well. He can get you a massive game or he can get you nothing. So if you want to take the shot on Zay Jones, I don't think it's out of line. I just wouldn't say bank on a great performance from him. That's not going to happen. Treylon Burks, if you've got him at this point, just drop him. It's not worth it. Los Angeles Chargers at the Green Bay Packers this week. Keenan Allen is a must-start player. Keenan Allen coming into the week questionable, but he did practice and he's expected to play through the game. I don't care if Keenan Allen is at 60%. You play Keenan Allen here because that's the Chargers' number one option, and this matchup is great, and he's been great. You do not sit Keenan Allen. I don't care how injured the guy is. If he's playing, he's good enough to go. I'm putting him in my fantasy starting lineup. Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Quentin Johnston, they're all flexible. I do think so. I've got Jaden Reed as the best flex option out of all the Packers receivers. I think he's the most explosive player. I think he's the best receiver they've got right now. And that's not an insult. I think he's a good player. I scouted Jaden Reed very, very heavily in my 2023 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide this offseason. And I said, this guy is an athletic player. He's got a very versatile skill set. And we're starting to see that with head coach LaFleur. So I think it's actually going to work out really well for Jaden Reed moving forward. Because Romeo Doubs, while he is still flexible, low ceiling. Very low ceiling for sure. And Quentin Johnston, if you want to take the shot, go ahead. But either way, like, his ceiling is just not that high. The best you're going to get from him is like 6 catches for 70 yards. It's just not that high of a ceiling because more often than not, he's going to disappoint. Christian Watson, I can't endorse my audience playing him. He's been a total nothing burger this year. Injuries he's dealing with, you could blame it on a lot of different factors. I'm not interested in it. The bottom line is he's not good right now. And I'm not telling my audience to play Christian Watson. Arizona Cardinals at the Houston Texans this week. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, you start them both. Nico Collins has no injury designation this week. This is a complicated situation. Tank Dell is a must start to me as well. And I've got Noah Brown in flex territory. Just understand this. I've seen conflicting reports this week about Noah Brown being ruled out versus him being ruled questionable. And when you go to the Texans website, as of the time of this filming, it says unspecified for his game status. So it'd be great if the mainstream media would actually purport some actual factual news on this one, because this one, we have no idea what's happening with Noah Brown. So he's in flex territory simply because of the fact that he's gonna be a good option. But if he doesn't play, you need to keep up with this one, and hopefully we can get some actual real news for this one relatively soon. But either way, I start both Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Hollywood Brown, you could play him. Like, he's a high-end flex option. He's in the Garrett Wilson territory for me, where it's always going to be a week-to-week question on if he is going to be in the must-start category or the must-sit, or I'm sorry, in the flex category. Just based on last week, I want to see a little bit more before I declare him a must-start. He only had 1 catch last week with the return of Kyler Murray. I think it's going to get better. I think he's unquestionably the number 1 wide receiver in Arizona. But how much does Kyler prioritize Trey McBride versus Marquise Brown? It's a question to ask yourself, although I will say high-end flex option for sure. And then Arizona, you don't play Rondale Moore. You don't play Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson is already questionable heading into the game anyways, so he may or may not go. You don't play him either way. And Robert Woods, his time is up, especially with Nico Collins back. Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. You obviously play CeeDee Lamb. He's been elite level. The matchup is there. Let's move on from that. Adam Thielen is still flexible. He's not a must start. I'll tell you that. The matchup sucks. His quarterback is not good. The offense sucks. There's just not much upside here. Against the Dallas Cowboys, he's about in the same range as Brandon Cooks, where I think Brandon Cooks, off of last week, I understand I'm going to have people asking if they can play him and if they should play him. And I say, I think he's playable. No doubt about it. I think if you want to play him over a guy like Jahan Dotson, who we'll go over in a minute, or if you want to play him over a guy like Zay Jones, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm just not going to come out and say we can expect some new consistency with Brandon Cooks. I just don't see that happening. And then the other Carolina receivers, DJ Chark week to week could be a good option here. Against the Cowboys, that's a no-go for me. And then Jonathan Mingo, if you've got him at this point, just drop the guy. New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. We've got two flexible options, and Terry McLaurin's a borderline must start. But Terry McLaurin's above Jahan Dotson because of the fact that he's been a more consistent player, and the matchup is so fantastic for both of them. That's why Jahan Dotson's still flexible. I understand last week, goose egg, that's a bad taste in your mouth, especially coming off some really good games before that. I understand that's a bad taste in your mouth for sure, but I would still say that in this kind of matchup, even with last week, he was still getting targeted. You can play Jahan Dotson if you are desperate. And like I said, you could play Brandon Cooks over Jahan Dotson. They're both basically in the same tier for me. I think they're both flexible. And as always, for over a month now, do not play a New York Giants wide receiver. Don't even roster one. It's not worth it. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the San Francisco 49ers. You start Mike Evans, you start Brandon Ayuk, and you start Deebo Samuel. Mike Evans is always a big play threat, and he's consistently their best wide receiver. Him and Baker actually have good chemistry together. So against the 49ers defense, I understand that matchup is not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a guy who has just been so way better than I thought he would be this year with a new quarterback. Mike Evans is a Hall of Fame level player. Brandon Ayuk is much better off with Deebo Samuel. Much better off. Deebo Samuel adds a complete new wrinkle to this offense that defenses just have to prepare for. So with Deebo Samuel, you can play both Brandon Ayuk confidently and Deebo Samuel confidently just simply because of the fact that Deebo Samuel can run the ball too. So he's got the rushing upside against a bad defense. Both of these 49ers options are good plays right here. And then Chris Godwin continues to be flexible. I'll always say it every single week. The upside that he has is basically non-existent. It's just really not there. He just doesn't run enough big plays for him. Him and Baker just don't have the chemistry. He's flexible because he gets targets, but that's about it. And then everybody else is irrelevant. Jets at Bills here, the next matchup. Stephon Diggs, you still continue to start him. I get it. The last several weeks have been really bad and honestly very concerning for Stephon Diggs. The reality with me is that I continue to play this guy because while the Buffalo Bills have been so unpredictable lately, and it's been really embarrassing to watch actually as a fan, the reality is that Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs are always capable of going off for a big game, and you just don't want that on your bench. I would never tell my audience to sit Stephon Diggs or to sit Josh Allen, and I would look like a fool for having 50 points combined with both of them on your bench. It's just not going to happen. Not on my watch. Garrett Wilson, I still consider him this week to be a must start. I say this every week with Garrett Wilson. He constantly teeters between must start and flex territory for me. It is entirely dependent on matchup, and I do think that this is a matchup he could take advantage of. And the reality is, Garrett Wilson's just tremendous. He really is. It's actually a shame that he does not have a better quarterback. It's a shame, and us as football fans have been robbed of watching a great player blossom this year because of the Aaron Rodgers injury. We got robbed. We totally got robbed. From a fantasy football perspective, we got robbed too. But that being said, he's just so good, he continues to be a must-start option for me on the border, but you could play him for sure. And Gabe Davis is always going to be playable. Big playability's there. I just don't love the Jets matchup, and there's no consistency, no rhyme or reason any week on why he does what he does. So, always going to be flexible because of the big play, and everybody else, you don't play another Jets receiver. Seahawks at the Rams this week. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are both must-starts. Puka's on the edge. He's on the edge between must-start and flex territory for me. The bottom line is that Cooper Kupp, with Matt Stafford back, his floor is up. Puka Nacua's ceiling with Matt Stafford back is raised. So the reality is that both of these guys can have a good game against the Seahawks secondary, which I think is good. But just keep in mind that both of their floors are relatively unstable right now. So Cooper Kupp, definitely going to be the one that you could definitely must start. Puka Nacua is right on the border with me, but I do think he's a good play this week. And then the 3 Seahawks receivers. Honestly, you know what's incredible? I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this video. I said to myself, is there another receiving core that has this much talent? And I consistently say that they're playable, but their quarterback is just not good. He's just not. Geno Smith is not a good quarterback. It's an interesting thing. Like, all these wide receivers are very talented, and they can all give boom performances. But at the same time, there's no consistency ever on who's the leading target. And at the same time, their quarterback just doesn't have that high of a ceiling. You could play all 3 of them, but don't expect them to have some very stable floor. Their floor, all of them, is about 3 to 4 to 5 points. Ceiling, one of them goes off for 20 to 30 points, and the other ones do maybe 10 points. So you can play all of them. Just saying, don't expect too terribly much on a weekly basis. The matchup is fantastic, though. Minnesota at the Denver Broncos. The Sunday night game, Jordan Addison, you could play him. And as I said in the intro of this video, I'm very glad that I waited until Saturday afternoon to film this, because just before I picked up the camera to turn it on to begin filming, Justin Jefferson was ruled out this week. So no Justin Jefferson changes the game. TJ Hawkinson goes up in my rankings this week, and Jordan Addison becomes a must-start player. He rises up the rankings into must-start territory. You can play Jordan Addison with confidence. And KJ Osborne, you can flex him if he plays. And he's expected to be cleared for this game. So we'll hopefully get some more news by Saturday night or Sunday morning before all the games start, so you can make a better informed decision. But as of right now, I am seeing that he is expected to play. He's not a must-start guy. I would play Courtland Sutton over him for sure. Courtland Sutton's right in that tier of guys where I could say definitely a must-start, but he's a high-end flex option at the very worst. Because the reality is, if you take away the touchdowns he's been getting, he's got very limited performances. Like 4 catches for 40 yards. It's not bad. And you can't take away the touchdowns he's been getting because he's been doing it on a consistent basis, which means they prioritize targeting him in the red zone. That's fantastic. But if one week it doesn't pan out to how they want it to, it's not good for you. So he's not a must-start guy, but he is a high-end flex option guy. And then Jerry Jeudy, I just can't endorse my audience playing him. He doesn't look interested to be out there. And honestly, Courtland Sutton's just the best option by far. Jerry Jeudy's ceiling is like 3 catches for 60 yards. That's about all we've got from Jerry Jeudy. And obviously, like I said, Justin Jefferson's out. Can't play him this week. Hopefully next week. Philadelphia Eagles at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Monday night game. First of all, guys, enjoy this game. Enjoy it as a football fan. I want my audience to enjoy this game and watch beautiful football being played, because this game is beautiful. I don't care if it's a 40 to 43 point game. I will be good with a nasty, physical, mean football game, or I'll be good with a track meet. The bottom line is we're seeing tons of talent on the field Monday night, and it starts with the Philadelphia Eagles receivers. AJ Brown, no-brainer. We don't need to discuss it. If you've got questions, let me know, but I would assume that most of you know we're starting AJ Brown. And Devonta Smith, must start. Matchup is fantastic. Rashee Rice is definitely the best option at this point out of the wide receiver core for Kansas City. He's been the most consistent. They're targeting him the most consistently. I think he's a high-end flex option this week because of the matchup upside. The reason I have Marquez Valdes-Scantling in here frequently as a flexible option is because in this type of game script that could be really high scoring, this is the type of game that Marquez Valdes-Scantling has one catch for 50 yards that went for a touchdown. This is the type of game that he has. So if you want to take a really deep shot, you've got injuries, you've got bye weeks to deal with, I think this is a legit option that you can play while also saying expect 0 points to be the floor. It's a very risky option, but one that could pay off. Just monitor the situation because, you know, the reality is that you could get a lot better options than that. Sky Moore, Canaries, Tony, Justin Watson. Don't torture yourself. Just don't do it, guys. I love the matchup, but none of these guys has any kind of upside whatsoever on a consistent basis. So let me know what questions you need answered for Week 11 Fantasy Football in the comments below. And if you want to see the must start and sit running backs for Week 11 Fantasy Football, click on this video right here.